Welcome to the Brainy8 Show, where we talk about all things Salesforce, sharing the coolest features, solutions, and best practices to turn you into a Salesforce rock star. Here's your host, former attorney turned Salesforce consultant and trainer, David Giller.
Hello and welcome everyone. Happy Tuesday. I hope you are doing well. For those who are watching this outside of the US, just so you know from a contextual perspective, this is the week of Thanksgiving and here in the US. And Thanksgiving week ends up being a very interesting week because even though Thanksgiving is only Thursday, most businesses give off half a day the day before, and the day after is Black Friday, which is not an official holiday of any kind, but a lot of companies just skip work that day also, and a lot of people take off the week, so a lot of folks are traveling. But either way, I thought, why not do the show regardless on the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week? So here we are, and honestly, even more specifically on the topic that we're focusing on, which is starting your own Salesforce consulting business. I figured the folks who are more interested in that are probably the ones who are going to be ready to take the time to either watch it live or watch the recording afterwards. So anyway, thank you all for joining today. So for those who are new to the Brainy8 Show, basically we follow a format, which is what you see down below. The show is broken up into 3 segments. The first segment is strategy, and that I should be pointing this way, the first segment is a strategy, and that's where we are focusing on some conceptual topic. And as I mentioned a moment ago, today the topic is all about starting your own Salesforce consulting business and things that you should think about. The second segment right here in the middle is the show me. That's where I'm actually going to be showing you something on the screen. And what we're going to be focusing on today is actually a topic that I completely love, and I can talk about it forever, which is how to use artificial intelligence as a copywriter. And what I'm talking about when I say copywriter, I'm talking about writing copy. If you are a Salesforce professional, doesn't matter if you're an admin, a developer, you're the leader of the Salesforce implementation within your organization, you're doing a whole lot of communicating. And it could be in written form, it could be a presentation, so it could be just the day-to-day business communications that you're doing at work. But more often than not, there's some type of externally facing communication, maybe a blog post, maybe a social media post, maybe a presentation that you're doing for a user group or something like that, where I know a lot of people. So for me, writing, words come easily to me. My whole life, people have been telling me to shut up and sit down. So words come very easily to me, whether it's in written form or verbally. So I don't necessarily struggle with finding the words to put on paper or digital. But a lot of times I find that I struggle with the creative side of how to maybe use different words to communicate the same thing, or maybe other related topics that I should absolutely include within the context of whatever it is that I'm presenting on or talking about, writing a blog article about, and I wouldn't have thought of it otherwise. Well, the artificial intelligence tool that I'm going to show you in a little bit, I totally love it big time because it helps me. I sort of treat it as if it's a person who's working for me and never needs a day off and is always there to help. And the level of competence that this tool has is really incredible. So I'll show you more about that. I don't want to hog up too much of that time. So the first segment is, I keep pointing that way. The first segment over here is on the strategy, which is things that you should consider when opening a Salesforce consulting business. And the show me segment is where I'm going to be showing you all about Jarvis, my freaking favorite artificial intelligence copywriting tool. And the last segment is the open Q&A, where you can ask any question. It could be on anything that either I talked about or maybe I should have talked about today, or anything else that's Salesforce related. To the extent that I'm able to help, I want to be able to answer those questions. So without further ado, let's jump into the first segment, which is the strategy. Okay, so we are talking about the what to consider before starting a Salesforce consulting business. And there are actually, I'm going to back it up a little bit, especially with the last 2 years, with everything that's happened with COVID. A lot of people have been rethinking everything about where they work and where they live and who they live with and the industry that they're in. And along with that, a lot of people have started to reconsider, should I be an employee like I have been up until now, or maybe I should start my own business of some kind, my own Salesforce related business. And so I would say that this topic has really come up more within the last 2 years than I've ever seen it before. And people are asking me this question all the time because they see that I started a Salesforce consulting business. And there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes than one would expect. So I'm going to break down this topic into a couple of different subtopics. The first thing that we're going to focus on are what are the pros and cons of being a Salesforce consultant. So we're talking about being a consultant, not necessarily running your own business, because most people who I see asking about like starting a consulting business, they're actually working as a full-time admin. So they don't even know what it's like to be a Salesforce consultant. For those of you who are watching who do know what it's like to be a Salesforce consultant, think of this as group therapy as I highlight some of the pros and cons of the things to think about or the things that go into being a Salesforce consultant. So some of the pros. You can work on as part of an overall project team. Sometimes as the consultant, there are other people who are part of the team. Maybe some other people are gathering the business requirements for you, or you are gathering the business requirements. Maybe somebody else is doing the implementation. Maybe certain people are doing other aspects of the implementation and you have different aspects of the implementation. Certain people control the budget and timelines and reporting out, and you are responsible for everything else. So the project team could look like a lot of different things, but very often you are working as part of a team. Now, by the way, when you might think, but we're talking about starting my own Salesforce consulting business. Where the heck is this team coming from? Sometimes within an organization, they'll say, look, we have this person who is intimately familiar with the business, with the operations, with the business processes. They will be doing the business requirements. Or here's our IT person. They plan on doing the implementation. We want you to be involved in some other way. So that's where the team aspect comes in. Next, there are some great, what I'll call exit options. Meaning, if at some point you no longer want to be a consultant, there are a lot of options of different things that you can explore. First of all, let's talk about, you can always go back to being a full-time Salesforce admin. Also, during the experience that you've had as being a consultant, chances are you've had exposure to a lot of different niche industries. Chances are that you've had exposure to a lot of different products, a lot of different use cases. Some of them might get you more excited than others. You've also grown your network by interacting with some of the clients, some of the employees working at those client organizations. So your network and the things that you're exposed to, topically, the niche industry, the products, the use cases, grows exponentially. So there are, with each of those options, you have an option to pursue one of them, to take it further if for whatever reason you decide that consulting is not for you. Next, in terms of the pros, you can learn many, many different skills. So you might not necessarily be that comfortable, let's say, building formulas in Salesforce. And you're working on a project where you're required to build some formulas, or you're required to modify some existing formulas, or let's say workflow rules. And you might think workflow rules, that's going out the door, right? Everything is going now towards flow. Yeah, but many organizations have been using Salesforce for some time and they have a lot of workflow rules. And it's not necessarily broken, but they do need you to make some minor edits to it. And you might be new to Salesforce. You might not have focused a whole lot on workflow rules. Now's an opportunity where you can go ahead and do that. And I mentioned before about being exposed to other products. You might be working with an organization where they already have, let's say, CPQ or Pardot or Marketing Cloud or DocuSign. So you could get exposure to a lot of different things that will help you build on the skill set that you already have. I hinted at this earlier, but consulting allows you to build a very powerful network. You're going to, as a consultant, you interact with the decision makers as well as the subject matter experts in each organization that you're interacting with. Very often as a consultant, you become responsible for tasks from the very beginning. So very often you're not necessarily inheriting something that's half-baked already. Somebody else worked on it. Now it's being given to you. Very often as a consultant, you're working on things from the onset. Another pro associated with being a consultant, if you like to travel, very often consulting does involve travel. Now within the new world that we're living in during and post-COVID, I would say that we're not really post-COVID. I mean, you look at the news. We want to think that we're post-COVID, but it's still happening here. But travel has definitely been impacted. And many organizations have totally put the kibosh on all things travel related. However, there are many organizations where you're still going to need to travel. Some of the subject matter experts are in different locations and they want you to be on site to work with some of these people to get an understanding of what are their business processes, what are their business requirements, what are the pain points that they have. Maybe they want the end user training to be on site, in person, classroom style. So there could be a lot of travel involved. Historically, pre-COVID, it was extensive travel involved typically. With consulting. Some of the other pros is that you get to see a lot of different use cases. You get to see objects, it could be even standard objects that exist in all Salesforce orgs that you have never used before, and they are relied on extensively within some of the client organizations that you're working with. Some additional pros, you get to work on some really demanding projects, and I'm saying that as a good thing. I'm the kind of person who I enjoy meaningful, challenging projects. I enjoy working on projects where I'm learning something. I'm being pushed to some limits. That makes a project really exciting to me. So you're going to see a whole lot of that as a consultant, which also makes it really good for your resume. As a consultant, you're going to learn how to deal with stress. There are going to be a lot of stresses associated with being a consultant. A lot of moving pieces, a lot of individuals who get involved. So it can be very stressful. It can be political, and you get to learn how to deal with all of that. Consultants can also make some pretty good money. How much? All depends on the geographic area, depends on your niche expertise, depends on your marketing abilities. So it depends on a whole lot of different things. In a nutshell, consulting really never gets boring. Let's talk a little bit about some of the cons associated with consulting in the Salesforce world. Consulting can be a highly intense, a very pressurized kind of environment. There are often very strict deadlines and sometimes unrealistic deadlines that are being handed to you by situations that you cannot control. Sometimes you're being pushed to certain boundaries. Like, it could be a lot of different things, by the way. I talked earlier about products or platforms or use cases or features that you have not used before. Well, just imagine, crank it up a little bit. Someone is expecting you to learn some of these features or products that you have never used before and get the thing done by the end of the week. And that's completely unrealistic, and you feel like you're drowning. So things like that can happen. And it doesn't take much to introduce some of those scenarios into the life of a consultant. Consulting very often, almost always, implies long working hours. So a lot of times you're working really late hours. You're working on weekends as a consultant. We're going to get to in a little bit later about managing your business and, setting boundaries from a work-life balance perspective, which is a challenge as well. But right now we're talking about specifically as a consultant. Working as a consultant can also be, believe it or not, very lonely. The reason why it could be very lonely is because even though you're working with a whole lot of different people, they were essentially tossing things your way and expecting you to perform magic and at the same time answer all of the questions that they might have on the status, the timeline, the deliverables. And you might not feel like you have the people around you to bounce ideas off of, to brainstorm with, which can also lead to a lot of anxiety. I hinted at it earlier. It can really put a hamper on work-life balance if you're under a whole lot of pressure and you're putting in more and more hours. The work-life balance becomes even more challenging if you have family members like children or maybe elderly parents, a significant other, who are expecting you to be able to spend some time with them because it's a real problem. Within consulting, there's also a lot of turnover. For those of you who might be working in a consulting firm, or you might even know of friends who were doing consulting at some point in time, and you've noticed that they moved on to another job, sometimes within a couple of months. And very often this is due to some of the stresses, some of the anxiety that come into play when being a consultant. There's a lot of insecurity. When you're a consultant, there's a lot of insecurity about what comes next. In other words, you're working on a project and everything is great and the deliverables are all coming up soon. You're about to go live and you have no idea, what project am I going to be working on when this is done? This client might not need us anymore. Do I have another client or project to be working on next? Which leads to tremendous swings in the workload. You could find yourself for a couple of months being totally drowned in work, and at some other point, all of a sudden it's crickets, total crickets, where you hear nothing. The things that seemed incredibly important 2 weeks prior, all of a sudden you're not getting any responses from anyone involved. And two other things that I'm going to point out. You could have some very unsatisfying outcomes when you're a consultant. Why? Because you're not always in control of everything. Senior management insists that you implement things in a certain way, and it's not following the best practices. And they insist, because they are the client, that you still do it in the way that they are asking you or commanding of you to do, and you are not in a position of authority to really push back that much. So in the end, you're working on a project that you cringe every time you think about it. I'm going to give you an example of that, where I was working with someone on a project and practically every text field was locked down, was read-only, not editable. Users were not allowed to create contacts. Users were not allowed to, even on an existing contact, users were not allowed to modify job title on a contact, correct the typo on the spelling of someone's name. They were not allowed to create accounts. When going to create a task, everything was a drop-down. There were no open text boxes, no description, no comments fields whatsoever for the end users. Users were not given the ability to create list views. So imagine working on a project like that, and you know that what you're working on, what you're being asked to do, is going to be super frustrating. You don't want to be an end user in that type of org. Yet you are the consultant who is being asked to make all of those fields read-only for the business users. That summarizes in a nutshell an unsatisfying outcome. By the way, I can go on for hours with horror stories on these kinds of things, but I want to keep it brief because we have a lot more to talk about. And success greatly depends on either the project manager or the client. So when you're the consultant, a lot of times you are not the only person who's involved in this. The client plays a heavy role of influence on whether or not this project is going to be successful. The client has unrealistic expectations of you, unrealistic expectations of the system, unrealistic expectations from a timeline perspective, unrealistic expectations of not even clearly communicating what their business requirements are, yet they expect you to be done with quote unquote it by the end of the week, and you don't even know what it is. So success depends on a lot of other people besides you. So that summarizes in a nutshell the pros and cons of being a Salesforce consultant. Now let's talk, and by the way, that was the most meaty out of all of them. Let's talk about some of the others. The next one is pros and cons of being a business owner. When you're a business owner, first we'll talk about some of the cons. Typically, you're going to work way harder and way longer hours than if you're a full-time employee. When you're a full-time employee, you are agreeing to a fixed compensation. I was going to say fixed salary, but it's salary plus bonus. It really depends. A fixed level of compensation in exchange for the risk and the hours that you would have otherwise if you were the business owner. So when you are the business owner, you're working a whole lot longer, a whole lot harder than you ever did before. A lot of people think that, I'm going to start my own business so that I can control my hours. Sure, you do that. You go sit and watch Netflix and expect clients to come in and just pay you for watching Netflix. It doesn't happen. When you're running a business, you're not going to have anyone next to you to guide you on the best practices for running the business, for all of the decisions that are involved in how you present yourself to prospects or to customers, how you handle specific situations, how you arrange the financial compensation arrangements that you have with particular projects, with the scoping of requirements, with the solution that you choose to implement for a particular use case. When you're the business owner, you're doing it solo. You're doing all of those things on your own, and you really don't have who else to turn to for advice, for guidance, for support. When you're starting your own business, you might not get paid for quite a while. So you decide to open up your own business. Great. You put up a website, you have a nice blog, you have a cool looking logo. It could easily take you quite a while until money starts to come in. You're constantly unsure of yourself. When you're a business owner, you have a blank canvas. You can do whatever you want. And that's the good news. And that's also the bad news. Because the bad news is you can do whatever you want. You don't really know if what you're doing is the right thing for you, for your business, for the goals that you want to achieve, for the market that you want to target. Now, the last item, which is a con for running your own business, when you experience failure as a business owner, the failure feels gigantically bigger than what it actually is. It feels horrific. It feels like your world is coming to an end. Why? Because in the end, all fingers point to you. You are the one who is most accountable when there is a failure. So you need to be prepared for that. Now, by the way, all of the things that I just mentioned, they are cons. I am not at all trying to tell anyone, don't start your own business because of all of these issues. I started my own business quite a while ago, and it is really hard. It is way harder than I ever expected it to be. It is also incredibly gratifying. It is insanely rewarding. I am thrilled that I started my own business. In many ways, I wish I had started my own business way earlier than when I did. However, the time that I was working as a full-time employee, I gained monumental experience and networking that my business would not have played out in the way that it did had I shortchanged my experience prior to starting my own business. So let's talk about some of the pros of being a business owner. You have control over your own destiny. And by the way, that means what niche area you focus on, what products or services you decide to offer, what types of clients you get to work with, what types of projects you decide to take on, what kind of fees you're willing to take on, what type of discounts you're willing to give. I can go on and on. So you are in control of your own destiny when you are a business owner. When someone is actually using what you created, it could be something as simple as a formula field. It could be something as simple as building a report. It could be something as simple as teaching someone how to build their own list views. And that feels so incredibly rewarding because you did something to contribute to a solution that has changed the way that they work. Now, by the way, it could be something way bigger than the examples that I gave you, but I'm purposely trying to show you in some really even small examples, you end up feeling very rewarded for the work that you are doing to help others. When you're running your own business, you are creating your own wealth. It is not dependent on any one person who, maybe your manager, maybe the CEO of a business where you're employed as a full-time employee. All it takes is a swipe of the pen, a budget adjustment, and your role is gone. When you're running your own business, you truly control your destiny, and you are the one who is either putting a cap to or removing the cap from what you're able to earn. You get to choose who sits at the table, meaning even if you're working on a project and one person is really nasty from the client side, you can turn to the client and you can say, by the way, I'm thrilled to work with you and I'm happy to deliver the solution that we talked about. But Susan over here, I just can't work with her. We don't get along. I can't continue working on this project if Susan is involved. If we can get some other people on the team to be more involved instead of Susan, we can continue. So you get to choose who sits at the table. As a full-time employee, you don't have that kind of say. So in the end, success feels really good when you are running your own business. Now let's pivot real quick and let's talk about how do you find clients or customers for your business? Because that is another huge challenge. Like, okay, I decide to open my own business, but like, now what? How are people going to know that I exist? How are people going to start signing up with me? What does signing up even mean? So what do you need to do? First, you need to, and for those of you who have heard me talk about personal branding, it's almost identical. The steps for building your personal brand, it's almost identical to finding clients, customers for your own business. And none of these are short wins. None of these are quick fixes. All of these things need to happen in tandem. Some will take way longer to come to fruition than others. You need to identify who your ideal client is. Now, initially you might say, anyone who pays me, anyone who has a problem with Salesforce, who's willing to pay me for my services. No, that's not your ideal client. Because I can come up with a gazillion examples where you would run the other way, even if those criteria are there, but there are some other factors that come into play. So you need to identify who your ideal client is. You need to identify your own unique value proposition. You need to figure out what makes what you're offering different from, better than anything else that's out there. You need to start sharing helpful content related to your niche. You need to start asking for referrals. Very often, especially in the early days of starting a business, you might need to invest in some paid advertising. Now, by the way, that by itself might sound very simple, but at the same time, if there's no money coming in yet, and you still need to pay the bills, where are you finding the money for paid advertising? That becomes a very big challenge. You need to attend meetups and events related to who your ideal client is and what industry they're in, what geographic area they're in, so that they know that you exist, so that they know what your value proposition is, so that they know how exciting it could be to start working with you. one of the things that you can do is you can start to partner up with other consultants or other firms. So you could start reaching out to other Salesforce consulting firms and basically ask them, or the individuals working at a consulting firm, and you can start asking them if they have any overflow work, any work that they don't have the bandwidth to take on, and point out that you have availability. You started your own business, and you need to be very transparent when you're having these conversations. I started my own business and I am looking to bring in my own clients, but until then, I'm willing to take on overflow work to basically do it in their name as an extension of their team while you are building out your own client base. That is something that I did, and it absolutely helped me out. And not only it helped me out when I was starting my own business, it actually helped from a networking perspective. It helped me immensely because that experience actually introduced me to a whole lot of other people, my quote unquote coworkers at the other consulting firm, who became friends of mine. They became referral sources. They moved on to other businesses, and then they became my clients, which is pretty incredible. Totally unexpected, but pretty incredible. And it just starts with one small step. This might seem obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Leverage social media. People need to know who your ideal client is. You need to provide value for your ideal client. Leverage social media for that. You don't have the money for paid advertising? Use social media. Follow up with any old leads, any people that are within your network that either they might know someone or they might be your ideal client. Start following up with them. Something else that you can do is you can start leveraging online job listings in order to reach out to those hiring managers and basically say, hey, I see that you have a job opening and you're looking for a full-time employee, but maybe you would consider, in the meantime, maybe you would consider exploring leveraging me as a consultant because I just started this Salesforce consulting business and I'm actually looking for some work and you need some help. So you can leverage online job listings to find consulting gigs. Next, we're going to talk about what are some of the things that can go wrong when running a Salesforce consulting business. By the way, if you have any questions, just feel free to type them in the comments below, starting with a Q, and I'll make sure to get to them in the last segment. So, things that can go wrong when starting your own Salesforce consulting business. The first one, and probably the biggest issue, is client management and relationship issues. A lot of times, I hinted at it before, clients' expectations are unrealistic. Sometimes it's their attitude. Sometimes it's the internal politics that they have within their own organization. So working on the client relationship and the client management aspects can be volatile, and it can make or break any organization. Managing the finances of running your business. Most people who start a business, myself included, do it because they're super excited about doing the thing, that providing the products or services that they've become experts in. A party planner starts a party planning business because they're excited about party planning. A dentist, it opens up a dental practice because they're excited about helping people with dental work. Very rarely, if ever, does someone open up a business because they're excited about putting together contracts and databases to manage their prospects and project management tools to manage their projects and finding contracts that they can use for all different sorts of situations, managing the finances of paying for the things that they need to keep the business open, and taking in the money that clients owe, putting together billing practices and invoices and keeping track of invoices sent and payments made against those invoices, tracking the time associated with various projects. Most people are not starting businesses because they're excited about those things. Yet all of those things are absolutely critical to successfully manage any business. So the finances is a big piece of it. The money that is owed to you, the money that you've actually invoiced, because you could have a lot of people that owe you a lot of money, but they owe you money because you never sent them an invoice. And you sent them an invoice, under what terms are they expected to pay? Are they expected to pay immediately? Is it by credit card? Do you have a way of collecting credit card payments? Is it by electronic means? Are they sending you a paper check? So there's a lot that goes into it where you need to get all of these things organized before you take on any of these clients. Next, not enough diversification. You might decide that you're going to specialize in one particular thing. I'll just pick something random, like let's say Pardot. And there's nothing wrong with specializing in Pardot, but that's your area of specialty. You open up Salesforce consulting business to help customize Pardot, to train people in Pardot. You know all the ins and outs of Pardot and integrating Pardot with Salesforce, and you're not diversifying because you love all things Pardot, and there's a tremendous amount of business to be made just in the Pardot space. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, Salesforce decides no such thing called Pardot anymore. It's now all baked into Marketing Cloud. Now what? What are you going to do? You're lost. You need to diversify. So just like diversifying any kind of investment, you need to diversify the areas of expertise, the types of products and services of what it is that you are offering to your client base. A lot of times, people don't realize that the inability to stand out within their market is going to put a screeching halt to their business. Because if you can't stand out, you're a commodity. If you put yourself out in the marketplace by saying, hey, I'm a Salesforce consultant, and here's the name of my business. And yes, our logo is very different than any other logo. And we've got X number of certifications, and we help with X number of X type of all of the following types of problems. If that's all you can say for yourself, and there's no real differentiating factor, why would someone choose you over someone else? So you need to figure out how you can stand out from the others in the competitors in your market space. Some other things real quick, because I just want to be very sensitive to the time. Some other things that can go wrong: lack of project scope when you're working on any project, managing client expectations, managing time. I talked about it earlier in terms of work-life balance. It could be very challenging, and overcommitting. As a business owner, as a provider in the Salesforce space, you want to say yes to everything. You want to help clients with everything. You want to say yes to the new business, but you're not paying attention to certain things that they're asking for, or certain nuances that exist within that client organization or within the project as they've defined it, that are going to self-destruct all over you. So you need to be very, very mindful of all of those things. So in the end, you need to be able to think for yourself, do I have what it takes to be successful as an entrepreneur in this industry? Again, it is a tremendous amount of work. It is completely doable. If I can do it, if others can do it, yes, you can absolutely do it too, but it is not for everyone. So if everything that I said so far does not scare you, I completely encourage you to go ahead and explore even further, starting up your own Salesforce consulting business. Anyway, that essentially wraps up the strategy session. So now let's go into the show me segment. And by the way, I'm going to get to your questions. I keep pointing the wrong direction. I'm going to get to your questions in the last segment. Let's jump into showing you how to use artificial intelligence to do some freaking crazy cool copywriting stuff. Okay, so here we are in a tool called Jarvis. And in Jarvis, let me go over here just to show you, like, when you first log in, this is what you see over here. So Jarvis is, like I mentioned before, it's an artificial intelligence copywriting tool. By the way, you're going to see above my head over there, you're going to see a QR code. If you're interested in starting a free trial of Jarvis, just scan your phone, assuming that you're watching on a device other than your phone. Scan, or you could go back to the YouTube video later. So with your smartphone, just open up the camera, and you don't need any special app. Just wave the open camera over the QR code, and it'll take you to a URL where you can start a free trial of it. But first, watch what I'm going to show you. So before you start the free trial, because I just love this stuff. Okay, so let me go in here into templates. And this could be a little bit overwhelming. So basically, with Jarvis, if you know what you're trying to write, like let's say I want to put together a video title. I'm putting together a YouTube video, and I want to have a title for it. So I go here, and I click on this, and in practically in all of these, you're going to see some pre-written stuff because I use Jarvis every single day, like throughout the day for all different kinds of things. So what is the video about? So let's say the video is about how nonprofits utilize Salesforce to track donors. How nonprofits use Salesforce to track donors and donations. So you can see over here, it's giving, and I realize that the color scheme is not that great. It's sort of gray over here. It's showing I'm using 59 out of 80 characters. If there are any particular keywords that I want to rank for, I could put them in here. I'm going to leave this blank. It doesn't really matter. Tone of voice. For tone of voice, I can put pretty much anything. So I can put things like excited, empathetic, instructional, casual, friendly, snarky, sarcastic, witty. I can also put names of people. So Jarvis is using, Jarvis has consumed a lot of content that was published on the internet prior to 2019. So think of anyone who has published a lot of content, or I should say a significant amount of content that's available online, and you could just put that person's name. I could put things like Gary Vee, Tony Robbins, Oprah. I can pick all kinds of celebrities if they have blogs, I guess. So I'm going to put over here instructional. And now I'm going to click over here where it says generate AI content. And when I do this, I selected 10 outputs as the default. I probably should have selected something a little bit smaller. And we're going to see over here on the right-hand side, we have a whole bunch of options here. How to use Salesforce to track nonprofit donations. The ultimate guide of how nonprofits can increase donations with Salesforce's gift module. There ain't no such thing. Gift module. 8 essential metrics for tracking donations in nonprofit organizations. Salesforce fundraising. Learn how to increase donations with 3 simple tools. Fundraising Salesforce tutorial for nonprofits, how the software can help the charity. So you can see there's a lot of different options here. I can keep going down. If I want more, I can hit generate more. So that's what I could do with this particular template. So depending on what it is that you're trying to do, you can choose a particular template. Watch this. I'm going to go here and I'm going to choose this. So I actually use this very, very often. The PAS framework. From a marketing perspective, PAS stands for, this is like a known methodology, a proven methodology for writing content from a marketing perspective. This PAS stands for problem, agitate, solution. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, I'm going to sort of keep carrying on with that same example that I gave before. So let's make believe I wrote a blog article, and what I want to do now is I want to put together a social media post encouraging people to go read the blog article about how nonprofits can leverage Salesforce to attract donors and donations. How nonprofits are using Salesforce to track donors and donations. And product description. So in here, I'm going to write in simple English, in this blog article, I provide 12 key ways that many nonprofits are using Salesforce today to track their success metrics for donors and donations. Tone of voice, let's say casual. No, let's say excited. So I'm going to hit generate content. And it's going to basically give me really what I use on a regular basis as my social media posts. Watch. Problem. Many nonprofits are still not using Salesforce for their donor management needs. Agitate. When you post it online, you remove the problem agitate solution prefix. Agitate. The reason is that they don't know how to set up a system that will work for them, and they're afraid of the costs involved. Solution. In this blog article, I outline the 12 key ways that nonprofits are using Salesforce today to manage blah, 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 blah. Let's find a different one. Problem. There's a lot of confusion about how to track donations and donors in Salesforce. Agitate. Salesforce has been around for over 15 years. Now, Jarvis might not be, when it cites facts, it might not be 100% accurate. So don't rely on the facts. You need to double check, but use those as placeholders when you do confirm the actual facts. Has been around for over 15 years, but still it's used by few nonprofits, and even fewer do it right when they start using it. I wrote this blog post to help clear up the confusion for you so that you can use Salesforce more effectively without wasting time on things that don't work. Here are 12 key ways that many nonprofits are using Salesforce today. So you see that, and it gave me 10 of these by just clicking a button once. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to use this over here where it's long. I could show you, I could spend days just showing you all of these different options. By the way, this one is really cool. Explain it to a child. So if, like, sometimes you're trying to communicate to someone and they just don't understand the concepts of what you're talking about. And this actually is pretty cool too. So let's go here, long form assistant. And I'm going to use this where it says blog post workflow. And now I'm going to choose, let's choose something completely different. And let's talk about, let's say I want to write a blog article highlighting the biggest problems associated with having bad data quality in Salesforce. Old, inaccurate, stale, duplicate data causes tremendous frustration for everyone on the team. So I'm writing in regular English here. By the way, you see over here where it says keywords optional. I'm going to leave it blank. I'm not going to bother with any keywords. If I cared from an SEO perspective to focus on certain words, I would include them, but I'm going to leave it blank. So I'm just going to hit continue. So now it's asking me for a title. And so basically it's asking, do you have a title or do you want me to come up with a title? Of course I need you to come up with a title. If I had a title, I wouldn't be here in the first place. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to click generate ideas. And it's going to give me, look at this, wasting time, the problems associated with bad data quality. Salesforce data quality, what's the biggest problem? 5 problems Salesforce users face when bad data quality limits performance. That is a freaking really good one. The biggest problems caused by bad data quality in Salesforce: old, inaccurate, and duplicate lists. This 6 undeniable truths of bad data quality. Frustration for everyone. Worst problem. I can go on and on, but let's pick this. This was the one that I really liked. So I'm just, by the way, if I wanted more, I could just click over here, generate more, but I'm going to choose this one. I want to move on. Now it's asking me intro paragraph. Do you have an intro paragraph, or do you want me to give you it? Of course, Jarvis, give me the intro paragraph. Do my work for me. So I just click over here, generate ideas, and it's going to give me 3 starter paragraphs. So watch this. Salesforce is a great tool, but what happens when all of your data is bad? If you're not careful, the biggest problems will arise. Old, inaccurate, or stale data can cause frustration for everyone on the team. Not only does this affect performance and productivity of Salesforce users, it also leads to time wasting and money lost. In today's blog post, we'll explore 5 major issues that come up with having bad data quality in Salesforce. And I mean, that's just the first one. That's freaking spot on. Everyone knows that data quality is a key component of the success of any business. But what does bad data quality mean? Well, it could be anything from old or inaccurate records to duplicates and stale information. This all looks like a human being wrote it. Like, is that not crazy? So let's go ahead. I'm just going to choose the first one. Like, why not? And now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click open editor. So now it gives me the equivalent of a Google Doc. Let me explain what we have going on over here. Hang on, I just realized that I'm sort of blocking with my floating head over here. Just want you to see what we have on the side panel. So over here, it brought in the title and the content brief from the prior screen. And over here, it's asking me the tone of voice. I might have one particular tone of voice. By the way, I don't know if you can see over here, it actually shows Joe Rogan. Very often, I do use this. I very often just use Oprah. I find that the tone of voice, it's like very caring, very empathetic. A lot of adjectives come in. I like it. Keywords, I don't really care about any keywords. And I have this compose button on the bottom. So right now I could just go right here and I can just hit compose and it's going to just continue writing for me. Watch this. Come on. Did I not click it? Okay. Didn't like that. Hold on. Maybe Jarvis is drunk. Okay. Didn't like that. So what I'm going to show you is this. What I'm going to do is over here. By the way, I rarely just click on the compose button to just keep writing. So over here, I have access to all of the same templates that I showed you before. So one of the things that I typically do is I'll go over here and I'll choose outline, blog post outline. So I might be like, I don't even know where I'm going with this article. So I'm going to go over here. For the blog post topic, the title, I'm going to just copy this and paste it right here. And again, I'm going to say Oprah. And I'm going to hit generate content. Yeah, it's already on Thanksgiving break. Brian, you're right. And now what we're going to see is I'm going to have an outline. So Jarvis is going to give me an ideal structure for this article. Data quality is a chronic problem in most organizations. Salesforce customers are not immune. The consequences of poor data quality. Here are 5 problems that users face. Achieving good data quality requires blah, blah, blah. Let's scroll down a little bit more. Okay. Yeah, Jarvis is like, out. Salesforce data is inconsistent. It's inaccurate. It's missing. So you could break this up in a lot of different ways. When data is inaccurate, inconsistent, or incomplete. How about when data doesn't provide the necessary insight to make decisions? When it takes too long to find what you're looking for? You could structure this in a whole lot of different ways. So if I wanted to take any one of these, I'm just going to randomly click on this one. So I'm going to click copy to clipboard. And now I'm going to paste it over here. So now that if I decide I'm using this as my framework, let's take it away over there. And now you might have noticed these underlines over here. I have Grammarly built into it, so you can see the little Grammarly icon. So if I go over here, Grammarly is basically saying, well, thanks, Jarvis, for the content, but let's fix this up grammatically. So I could just do this and using Grammarly. And something else we have here is a plagiarism checker. A lot of people who use Jarvis are sort of afraid maybe Jarvis is copying and pasting stuff from the internet. So this way you know that this is totally 100% unique. Now, one of the reasons why I copied and pasted the outline is because what I typically do now is I go here and I choose this as an H2. If you're not familiar with from an HTML and blogging perspective, H2 is like my subheading. H1 is the primary heading, which is over here on the left-hand side. So if I go here and I say that's an H2, I could now go right over here and I can start typing. Watch this, I'm going to do mid-sentence. Performance often takes a hit when, and mid-sentence, I'm simply going to stop. And now I realize my head is blocking it, so I apologize. I'm going to click on this compose button that I have down below, and Jarvis is taking over from the rest of the sentence. Will just continue writing for me. And by the way, I can just keep hitting compose and it's just going to keep writing. And I could go back if I wanted some other templates over here. I could leverage some of these other templates, or I can go back over here and I say, great, I'm now ready for this next topic. So let's move this over here and let's move it up a little bit. And then I can go back over here. And I can have Jarvis, just by hitting compose, I can have Jarvis now is going to focus on this subheading. So Jarvis understands that this is a subheading that's under this topic, and that's what it's going to focus on. This is like crazy, crazy stuff. Now, by the way, if in the end, I want to be mindful of the time. I want to answer some questions that came in. If at the end, so let's say I get all the way to the end, and then I want to put together a conclusion paragraph. So let's go back over here, and I want to take this. And I can go over here, and one of the other templates I have is blog post conclusion paragraph. What are the main points? I'm just copying the title. Call to action. Download my checklist PDF. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to hit generate AI, what did it say? Outputs. So data quality is a major problem Salesforce uses. It's not just an annoyance. It can also limit performance and success. I've put together this checklist to help you maintain the quality. Let me know your thoughts on this article. So, and you can see some of these range from just 2 sentences to many, many sentences. Now that you know how to plan and execute a successful, oh no, that was a different one. I'm sorry. In the final section of the post, we'll share 5 problems that can be caused when bad data quality hits performance. So it's basically helping you to find the right words to get where you're going with it. So again, I totally encourage you, give it a try. Let's switch over to the Q&A section because I want to address any questions that you guys have. Okay, so let's go back over here, and I see that Tunji has a really good question. Is it inevitable to be a consultant if you aim to become a solution architect? All it really means when you say you're a consultant, it means that you are not a full-time employee of the organization. You can come in as a consultant to just be the solution architect, or to just be the business analyst, or to just be the person who actually configures Salesforce to do the implementation. Sometimes I get involved with projects just to be the trainer, the end user trainer. In other words, I'm being approached by one of my competitors, essentially, another Salesforce consulting firm that did the implementation. They did the business requirements gathering. They did the configuration. Everything is ready to go live. But all they want my help with is to do the end user training because either they don't have the bandwidth, the skill set, they're not interested in doing that end user training. So they want me to come in just to do that. So the answer is it can be, if that's what you want. If your goal is to be a solution architect, you can totally do that 100%. MIG Group says, I now realize there's a comment, not a question. The key is the methodology, to get some clients and not just enough, not to be overwhelmed. So it's true. No matter how enthusiastic a client might be. So you might, or I should say a prospect. You might be talking to a prospect and the prospect basically says, oh my gosh, you can help us with, with this. And oh my gosh, your price is so reasonable. And oh, we can't wait to start working with you. But do you think you can start on Monday? And do you think you can get it done over the next couple of weeks? This is top priority, absolute top priority for us. And then they go radio silent, and they go radio silent a lot of times for all sorts of reasons. It could be internal politics. They need to get approval from someone. They realize that maybe they scoped their own project wrong. And they're non-responsive. They're not answering any of your phone calls or emails anymore. They come back out of the dead. They come back 6 months later and they say, oh yeah, remember we talked, we'd like to move forward on that. So you never know. And by the way, the project could get started and midway, all of a sudden, everything is put on a temporary hold. And sometimes that temporary is a couple of weeks, and sometimes it's a couple of months. So part of the roller coaster of being a consultant, you are not always involved or aware of some of the surprises that might come into play. So that goes back to diversification, that goes back to having a pipeline of prospects that are coming in, of different kinds of projects that you're working on, so that you are not rattled too much when that does happen, and it always happens. Tunji's got another question. How feasible is it to build a team of consultants basically in order to ultimately build a business structure and create a consulting company? So the answer is, it is completely feasible. That's how most consulting businesses operate. However, a little bit of a catch-22. How do you go out and hire those consultants and they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs because the business has not come in, the projects have not come in? Or the other way around, we've got the projects and now we need the consultants to get started ASAP on it. So it is somewhat of a balancing act. But most Salesforce consulting businesses, or I should say most professional services consulting businesses, do exactly that, where it's many different consultants on the team, and they might have one group of people who are only working on marketing and bringing in new leads and closing deals of new projects to be worked on. They then hand it over to the consultants who are actually doing the work, the business analysis, the business requirements gathering, the documentation, the actual configuration work, the actual deployment of the configuration, while the sales and marketing team is going out bringing in more folks into the pipeline. So it is completely reasonable. Follow-up question that Tunji has is, how valuable is Upwork for consultants? It can be very valuable. So I personally I do have an Upwork account. I might have at some point created a profile to pursue this, but I never actually did pursue trying to get clients that way or projects that way. So I personally have not done that to build my consulting business. However, it is completely a viable option, 100%. It is absolutely a viable option to solicit work through Upwork, through Freelancer, through Fiverr. There are many other websites like that where you can start building your project portfolio like that. However, one thing that you need to understand is, similar to, I'll say, Uber, you're not really... It's very hard for you to build some sense of commitment or real relationship with clients when they hire you through those platforms. There's little, there's very little of a sticky factor. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Those platforms are going to constantly offer up to even the same client who hired you before. Next time they go to post another project, that platform is going to offer up all of the competitors that you're competing against to get that work from them. And based on all sorts of factors, you might not necessarily get it, even though you had a wonderful experience with them first time around. So those are things to think about, but it's absolutely a viable option to start building to get money coming in and to actually have some projects to work on, 100%. Emily's got a question. When offering to take overflow, should you try to avoid a company that caters to the same kind of clients that you do eventually? So that is a great question, Emily. I would say I firmly believe in transparency, and very often I actually have a fantastic relationship with, I think, every competitor of mine that I know of. I have a really good relationship with. A lot of times we just do brainstorming together. A lot of times we refer work to each other. Like, we're in the same small world, as big as the Salesforce world might feel. It's actually a lot smaller than it seems in the numbers. I'm not trying to say that anyone is fictitiously representing numbers. It's just, it's a global world. We're all interconnected, and you get to know a lot of people. So a lot of my competitors, I have great relationships with them. So I would not necessarily say that you should stay away from a particular consulting firm just because there's overlap. You could look at it in the exact opposite. There could be tremendous synergies where at some point you might find yourself overwhelmed with a particular project and you want to have that solid relationship with that competitor so that you can bounce ideas off of them, where the world goes round and karma, it comes back. So put positive vibes out there, offer to help your competitors. It will come around. You don't know when, and you don't know by how much it will be magnified when it comes back to reward you for your prior engagement with them. But I would absolutely not hold back from pursuing that. Brian, this is a fantastic question. Thank you for bringing it up. Hopefully you're still on. If not, hopefully you'll watch the video. I did not mention relationships with Salesforce executives. How much business does that actually bring versus other methods? So I went down this road at some point. So I do know that there are many Salesforce consulting businesses where almost all of their business comes from Salesforce account executives. When I first started my business, I was getting a lot of leads from Salesforce account executives. And I won't hesitate to say that what they were presenting me with were the bottom of the barrel, the worst clients and the worst projects that I could ever consider getting involved with. I got suckered into taking some of those clients, some of those projects, thinking that it's going to help me get better projects, get better clients, build up my business, get referral business. No. So I'm purposely trying to filter what I'm thinking. But basically what I've discovered is that I wanted to build my business through my brand and through the value that I provide, and to not be dependent on the referrals from Salesforce account executives who actually don't know a whole lot about Salesforce. They don't know a whole lot about Salesforce functionality, about the nuances within the Salesforce platform. They don't really know that much about the features of the products which they are selling. And when the client has unrealistic expectations of what can be done, and the account executive is basically saying, oh, sure, easy. Yeah, you'll just talk to the Salesforce consultant. They'll take care of it. And you're like, what are you talking about? That's not freaking possible. That's not part of the tool set. Like, no. So that's where a conflict of interest arises very, very quickly. So I got out of that game as soon as I had this awakening moment. And I still get Salesforce account executives that often approach me with prospects, and I rarely even follow up with them, because generally speaking, I have found that it is an absolute waste of my time. These are the worst clients, and they are penny pinching. The clients have... Let's put it this way. When a client decides that they're going to explore, a Salesforce prospect decides that they're going to explore Salesforce licenses, nowhere in their mind is a budget for consulting. So they're thinking, how much will it cost to get the licenses? They get on a demo and they talk to a Salesforce account executive who's starting to show different features and different products. And look at this. Ooh, whiz bang. It's so cool. And they're saying everything is easy. Oh my God, it's so easy. Oh my God, anyone can learn this for free on Trailhead. Anyone can do it. Absolutely anyone. You don't need to be a developer. Anyone can do this. So they're trying to make it seem like everything is as easy as plugging in the toaster and pressing the start button. Now, when they're doing the implementation, they'll ask as a standard question, oh, do you have someone internally who's going to be handling all this? Or do you want me to introduce you to some partners who can help you with this? What? Partners? What are you talking about? There's another line item in the budget for this project? So they are not even aware that there should be a line item. And usually the account executives, because they want a signed contract, they don't want to introduce any delays in getting that signed contract. The account executives are looking to introduce them with fixed budget projects. So with a fixed price, fixed cost, and you're going to solve all of the problems. You're going to do the entire implementation for these people for, let's say, $5,000. This business themselves, they have no idea what they want or what they need from the system. The account executive has no idea the size of the project, but they're asking you to limit it to whatever magical number they came up with. So to get involved in that conversation is going to be a failure for you and for the consulting and for the client. So I stay far away from those projects. Basically, I turn to them and I say, you go introduce them to somebody else for $5,000 or whatever it is, because there's no way in the world their expectations are going to be met for $5,000. And the clients will say the project is never over. The consulting firm is going to say, but I gave them everything that they wanted and they keep coming up with more things. It's bad. It's really, really bad. So I stay far away from that. But Emily has another question. I'm so glad I'm able to help you guys out. So I do apologize that I'm running over, but for those who are with me and still have questions, I'm happy to stay on for a little bit longer to answer your questions. Okay, Emily's got a question. Is it possible or advisable for the first client or two to be taken on personally before spending money on a business name website? So the answer is yes, sort of. Here's the challenge. So think of it as from a personal liability perspective. You want to have, and I did not even talk about this as one of the things to consider, the legal entity that you create. So you are helping a business to set up Salesforce. Everyone has really good intentions when you're first starting out. What if something that you're doing is perceived and you're doing everything right? You're not doing anything wrong whatsoever. You're following every best practice imaginable for this project, for this implementation. Yet the client has some unrealistic expectation because of some crazy thing that they saw on YouTube, whether they think something is possible or something that they had at their prior job, and they're expecting you to magically know and magically implement whatever it is that they saw, whatever it is that they have in their head. That is completely not realistic. And you say project is over, like we're done. And they say, no, but you didn't do X, Y, and Z the way I expected it to be. And emotions start to get riled up, and now they want to sue you. You want to have, and I'm not giving legal advice here, but I'm telling you that you're in a much better position if the contract is not with you as a person, where in theory they can come after you and all of your personal assets. You own a home, they're going to come after your home. If it's a corporation and the corporation, especially as a startup, has minimal assets, the total assets it includes like one business account that probably has less than $5,000 in it. So that is the only asset that they could possibly go after. They want to sue the business. They're suing a corporation. They are not able to touch your personal assets. So from that perspective, you want to have a corporation, that legal entity of a corporation, where the contract is in the name of the corporation. The contract is not in your name personally. You don't want that all of a sudden, heaven forbid, 2 months later, you lose a parent and you inherit a whole lot of money. You don't want that company coming after that inheritance. Like, no, those are your personal assets. They need to be separated from corporate assets. So from that perspective, doesn't matter what the company name is, doesn't matter what the logo looks like, to have that corporation and the contract is in the name of the corporation, and the business has its own business accounts. Brian, I'm LinkedIn connected with about 800 and now very little work. I spent months trying to cultivate those relationships instead of... you don't want to focus on the Salesforce. Let's assume that the Salesforce account executives are being propositioned by other consulting firms that have lots of money to spend and wining and dining them. And you're competing with that also. Like, from my perspective, having nothing to do with the money, I wouldn't want the business coming from them. You're much better off going after the clients directly. Anyway, with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining me today. Have an amazing Thanksgiving week, and I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.